Talking Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
Welcome into Talkin' Cougars Season 3, Episode 1. I'm Alex Brink with my man, former Washington State great wide receiver, Michael Bumpus. Bump, we are back. Things are popping on the Palouse. It is week 1. Idaho Vandals are coming to town, but we got to talk about all the offseason change. 70 new faces on the Washington State roster. You got a whole new coaching staff, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, and the new head man, Jimmy Rogers, has set the tone early. What has been your impression of Coach Rogers and his staff to start this Cougar football season?
What up, B? Man, I was fortunate enough to co-host some events with Yogi Roth when it comes to fundraising, right? So during those moments, I got a chance to talk to all of these coaches, and there's a different energy about what's going on in the Palouse. Now, obviously, Dickard was great with his energy, great with his staff, but there's a hunger that I'm getting from this group, especially Jimmy Rogers, man. He's sitting on the stage, talking to alumni, getting them fired up, dropping a few F-bombs. I'm like, you know, that's my guy already, man. If you ain't afraid to curse in front of these people who you're supposed to give money to. But there's change coming, right? It's going to be a different defense. It's going to be a different offense. You're bringing a bunch of the players from South Dakota with him. It's going to be a real test. I'm interested. It's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen with this group because it's the unknown. With all these transfers coming in, with coaches making a step to this division of football for the first time, there will be some questions that need to be asked. But I will tell you this, the players are bought in, and it feels like they're on a mission. Great start for me so far.
Yeah, I tell you what, the thing about Jimmy Rogers that really stood out to me, Bump, is his kind of version of radical candor, right? Like, he's just going to say it like it is. He's going to tell you how he feels, whether that's how he feels about the state of the program, certain players, what he views this team can accomplish, where they need to get better, where they're playing well. Like, I love that part about Jimmy Rogers. He's going to come out and he's going to tell it like it is. And I think that sets a great tone for the staff and for the players that they will know where they stand and what they need to do to get better. And I think that's what you got to have in a leadership position at a place like Washington State. And with Jimmy Rogers, and even as you work down Jesse Bobbitt, the defensive coordinator, or Danny Freund, the offensive coordinator, two guys that he worked with last year at South Dakota State, you can tell they're very much on the same page. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see a little something different. It's not going to be air raid, right? There'll still be some spread elements, but it's not what Washington State fans have come to know offensively. And there's going to be some tweaks on defense. I think tweaks that could really pay dividends for Washington State in this season. But again, like you said, it all comes down to how you execute out on the field.
Yeah, offensively, we're going to see some tight end play. I mean, we are going to see some tight end play, something that, we saw last year, but I feel like it's going to be a real staple in this offense. They will spread it out. They will run the football. It's going to be multiple. I think that's the best way to go when it comes to football in today's era. Yes, you want to spread it out when you have to, when you need to, when you have the matchups, but you got to be able to pack it in and run the football as well. And I love the tight end position. I'm falling in love with the tight end position every single year because they're one of the more versatile players on the football field. You get a tight end who can block, who can leak out into the flat, who can run the seams. It's going to keep the defense guessing. So offensively, I'm excited to see how they switch some things up a bit. And they got some running backs coming over from South Dakota as well.
Yeah, and we got to talk about that. Like I mentioned in the open, 70 new faces on the roster, including a ton from South Dakota State, a championship-level football team at the FCS level. Semifinals last year, championship in 2023. Some really good football players that came with Jimmy Rogers, amongst others, right, in the transfer portal. In your opinion, which one of those newcomers or transfers is going to make the biggest impact this year?
Angel Johnson averaged 7 yards per carry. Now, I know that's at a lower level, but I don't care what level you're playing at. When you can average 7 yards per carry, you are doing something right. And what that tells me is that they have a back that they can lean on automatically. As you know, B, how do you set up the pass? You run the football. So I'm looking at Angel Johnson to bring that physicality, that speed that he had over there with South Dakota and just transfer it over here. But they have to make sure that they set him up correctly. Do some under center stuff, do some shotgun stuff, some play action. Again, keep them multiple, but 7 yards per carry, any level, I'll take it. Who you like?
Well, you talked about Angel Johnson. Kirby Voorhees also came over, the young back, redshirt sophomore. He's another one to keep an eye on. I'm going to go defense, though, Bum. Another South Dakota State player. That's Tucker Large. He is the man on the back end. He plays that free safety position. He will come downhill. He'll put his face mask on you. He's a ball hawk. 3 interceptions last year at South Dakota State. All-American at the FCS level for that team. He could really do it, Bump. And I would tell you what, Washington State, when they've been great on defense, has been when they've had great safeties. Think back to when we were playing, right? The Hussein Abdullahs. Before that, Eric Coleman, right? Lamont Thompson. And then in more recent times, right? Jaden Hicks, right? Dayon Buchanan, right? You can keep going down the list. Jalen Thompson, a bunch of great safeties. Washington State's defense plays great when they have great safety play. Tucker Large is that man, but they also have some other guys that came over on the back end we'll talk about more later. I'm talking about Cale Reeder, also at the safety position, Matt Durrance. I think there's a lot of really good defensive football players on this roster that transferred in. I'm looking at Tucker Large, but I'm looking at some of those other guys to step up too.
Caleb Francis, I'm sorry, I got to get used to these names. I'm sorry if I'm jacking your name up. He came over from South Dakota too, had 78 tackles over there. Not the biggest guy in the world, only 6 foot, about 190 pounds. But everything that I see and that I hear is that he's going to get downhill and he is going to hit you. I know Washington State has been known for their offense over the years, but like you mentioned, when the Cougs are rolling, that defense is playing some good football. You're getting the football into your offense's hands quickly. So you're going to have to fly around here, man. They're going to be a bit undersized. When you got a linebacker that's about 6 foot 190, you'll be a bit undersized, but I'm sure that strength program's taking care of them. I'm looking at Caleb to come over from South Dakota and make a huge impact early.
Yeah, I mean, look, new faces all over the defense. And that defense for the Jackrabbits last year, they were number 1 in scoring defense at the FCS level, top 5 in almost every category. Jesse Bobbitt, the defensive coordinator, came over, the man that led the way for 2 years with South Dakota State last year on the defensive side as the defensive coordinator. So you know he's got a good scheme. He's got some of his players. But Bump, there's some holdovers, right, from last year in the previous regime for Washington State. There's some faces that we recognize. Who are some of the guys that you see on the roster who are coming back, who wore the crimson and gray last year, that are going to make an impact in 2025 and 26?
You know I'm starting with the White House, man. Josh Meredith, he is back. He's going to do his thing. I remember him catching a big play on the sideline. I forgot who it was against, man, but all I see is him on the sideline making a huge play. And it's important that you have some guys who are left over. It's important that you have these guys to not teach the coaching staff about what Wazoo is, because they got to make it theirs. But, you know, there's something special about being in the Palouse, knowing where to go, being familiar with the area, passing over stories to, what, you said 70 new guys who are going to be on this roster. So I'm looking at Josh Meredith and I'm saying, hey, continue to grow, continue to do your thing.
I'm going to stick on the offense. For me, it's Trey Lechner. You said more tight ends. Trey Lechner is a multiple athlete. I'm looking forward to see what he can do. When we come back, Bump, we're going to take a look at the most important position on the field. That's the quarterbacks, man. We got to talk quarterbacks when we come back on Talkin' Cougars. This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. And speaking of quarterbacks, man, we got to talk about the quarterback situation at WSU. Enlighten us, B. What's happening?
Boy, I tell you what, I mean, we obviously saw Zevi Eckhouse last year in that bowl game against Syracuse. He stepped up in a big way, tough situation, right? And nothing but love for Zevi Eckhouse, the way he handled that, his experience from Bryant, right? He had played a ton there, then backed up John Mateer all year and stepped in a big moment and really handled his business. It was a tough game, tough loss, but I thought Zevi Eckhouse did a great job all offseason. He's been working and grinding. But there's other guys on the roster too, Bump. Jackson Potter coming back. He was recruited to Washington State by Jake Dickert. He was from Santa Margarita down in Huntington Beach. He's a guy that can really throw the football, big passer, 6'5". And Cougs brought in 2 transfers this era of the transfer portal. Julian Duggar from Pitt, a young player, redshirt freshman, great athlete, played in the bowl game last year, had 2 rushing touchdowns, electric runner, threw for 80 yards and another touchdown. He's a really nice-looking player for a young guy also. And then you got a Johnny Shepard who came from Rutgers, who also has some experience, also a really talented player. Those 4 guys on the roster, and guess what, Bump? They have said they're not going to announce who the starting quarterback is until that first snap happens against Idaho on Saturday. I don't know if you can keep it a secret. We'll see. But there's 4 guys on the roster and 3 for sure that really have a chance.
The suspense, I love it. I'm calling the ASU Northern Arizona game, and they're doing the exact same thing at Northern Arizona. So we'll see how tight it is with WSU. But I'll touch on Zevi a little bit, man. He went to Culver City High School, one of the greatest high schools in all the land. Your boy went there. Like you mentioned, he went to Bryant. Had a good bowl game showcase against Syracuse. They're up for a little bit, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and they like him. But like you mentioned, when you got other guys there, there's going to be some competition. But there's a name I keep hearing about when it comes to the wideout spot. This is another kid who decided to stay. Played a little bit last year, came to WSU as a track guy, but now he's officially a football guy. I gotta look at his name here. I know he's from Monroe, the place where I'm from, but we call him BG. But his full name is Brandon Ganeshamordi. All right, I'm sorry, BG, if I jacked that up. But he's a track guy. He's 6'3", 201 pounds, a very technical receiver. The knock on him early was that he was just a track guy, wasn't used to getting hit, but now he's put some weight on. He's being physical. He's a downfield threat, one of the more technical players on this team. I know we talked about Meredith, and we're going to count on him as well, but you're going to need guys like BG, a.k.a. Brandon, to set the tone and make some plays for whichever quarterback gets the start.
Yeah, you talk about Brandon Ganeshamordi, and then you talk about Josh Meredith, already a transfer for Washington State at the wide receiver position. Jeremiah Noga is a really intriguing player for me. Came in from Oregon State. He was a walk-on there, earned a scholarship, 6'2", 190 pounds, can really run. I knew him out of high school. His high school quarterback is one of the best players in the FCS. Down at Stephen F. Austin, Sam Vidlak, and Noga has had rave reviews in camp from the offensive staff, a guy that seems to be in the right place at the right time. He really got in and understands the playbook. So we'll see between him and Meredith if those guys can step up and be some big-time wide receivers for whoever the quarterback is. We don't know yet who that will be until that first snap against Idaho.
No, I like Noga as well. Saw him play at Oregon State. Didn't light it up, about 23 receptions, 200, 300 yards, no touchdowns. But you see the potential in that young man. Has a nice frame on him, 6'2", 190 pounds. I think he could be a sleeper. You know, that receiver room over there with Oregon State is pretty deep. That's why he made the move to Washington State, because he felt like he can play right now, and I think that he can. Names are good. Keep piling the names. You need competition. Competition is going to bring out the best in these guys. So I like Noga. I like BG. I like Meredith. I think for this offense to go, it's going to be set up by the run. But when it's time to make plays down the field, receivers have to get open and go up and grab the football. I think this is a group with a lot of potential. It's going to be a process, though. It's going to be week by week, day by day, because you don't have any 5-stars out here. But what else is new for the Cougs, man? Just keep grinding, keep developing, and they'll be competitive.
Yeah, and this is an offense that you're not going to have to run out 8 receivers, right? You need 3 or 4 guys that can really make an impact, because the tight ends are going to be involved. And when you look at all 3 running backs right now, Bump, that will be shooting up for Idaho, whether it's, like you said, Angel Johnson, Kirby Voorhees, or the holdover from last year, Leo Pualasi, they all can catch the ball out of the backfield. So you've got running backs and Maxwell Woods when he gets back ready to go. You've got running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think that's going to really help in this offense as well. They will be explosive players in the pass game to help the offensive coordinator Danny Freund get this thing going, whether it's receivers, running backs, whoever it is, tight ends. There will be weapons on the field for Washington State.
Dylan Payne, let's not forget about Dylan, man. Dylan has some moments last year running back for WSU. I like the mix. I know that you mentioned to start the show that there are 70 different players on the team, but it feels like whichever group we talk about, there is a guy who decided to stay and who can make an impact for this team. So I think it's important that there is some turnover there. When we return, we have a sit down with OC Freund. That is next right here on Talkin' Cougars.
This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun. Back now on Talkin' Cougars, super excited to have new Cougar Offensive Coordinator Danny Freund join us. Coach Freund and I have spent some time together this offseason at Cougar golf tournaments, around practice. I've been really impressed with what him and the rest of the offensive staff have brought to the table. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Now, I got to start here, man, because you're coming from South Dakota State by way of University of North Dakota. You're in Pullman now. Tell me a little bit about if it feels familiar in a way to be in that college town that we all know as the Palouse.
Yeah, it's a unique college town setup. Obviously, a higher level of football than what I've been a part of. But the last two places I were at were similar town sizes, similar like rural communities, and the people have been awesome. The just the welcoming that our family has got here in Pullman has been awesome. But just yeah, the kind of the town kind of revolving around the athletic department and the sporting events has been similar to where we've been. One of the reasons I think Coach Rogers was very attracted to this job in terms of how we fit as a staff and what we can bring to the table. So super excited to be here. Can't wait to get rolling on Saturday.
Yeah, we would expect nothing less, right, from the folks in Pullman and Washington State for sure. Just to give our viewers a little background on you, obviously played quarterback at University of North Dakota. You coached there for a long time. You were the offensive coordinator for a number of years, had a lot of success, and then went over to South Dakota State with Coach Jimmy Rogers and was a part of some really, really good football teams there. Talk about your coaching journey a little bit, kind of how you landed at Washington State.
Yeah, I mean, we were in Grand Forks, North Dakota for a long time. I played at the University of North Dakota and then was fortunate to coach there for 13 years. So all my kids were born there. I met my wife there. That place is really special to us. Had an opportunity to join South Dakota State about a year and a half ago or before the 2024 season. And just felt like it was a great opportunity for growth and continue to obviously learn in the profession and get around great coaches. So Coach Rogers kind of recruited me. We had played against those guys at South Dakota State when I was at North Dakota. Had some great matchups. He was the DC and then the head coach, and obviously didn't love playing against our offense. So he kind of, wanted to hire me on the staff, and it was a really good experience last year having the ability to coach a great quarterback and a great offense at South Dakota State, along with some, great coaches. I was the co-offensive coordinator there. Kind of took a step back from calling the plays. And then now that we're in Pullman, was fortunate enough to kind of get that opportunity again with Jimmy, and have been really excited about getting back to calling plays and getting around the staff, and feel like we have a really good opportunity to do something really special here. And as we join the new Pac-12 and, begin the season this weekend.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, for Coug fans, it's a little bit of a departure from what we know in a way, right? We've been indoctrinated into the air raid system from Mike Leach, and then along the way with Eric Morris and Ben Arbuckle. Your system's a little different. It's not specifically air raid, but it's got spread elements, but sounds like maybe a little more balance. Maybe just share a little bit about what might be similar, what might be different, what we're going to see come Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the best offenses are built around the players that you have and the skill sets of those guys. So I think it's going to be a mix of a little bit of everything. I think that there will be some air raid stuff in there. There'll be some, some physical 12 personnel stuff in there. But ultimately, it's about how do we move the ball and how do we run the plays that work to have the most success and score points. I do think there's an element of physicality that you'll see in terms of running the football. We do want to establish the line of scrimmage and create a run game to be able to play action people and throw RPOs. And I also think, the explosiveness part won't change. We want to take shots down the field. We want to create explosive plays in the pass game and the run game. And how we do that, it might look different at times, but we're going to mix personnels. We're going to motion. We're going to shift. We're going to, go up tempo at times. We're going to huddle probably most of the time. But I think ultimately it's about how we utilize our guys on our team and our skill position players specifically. And I think when you think about balance, it's about just utilizing all five of those skill guys and getting those guys touches, and then having a quarterback that can, be a point guard out there and distribute and make good decisions. But it might look a little different than years past. I have a lot of respect for what they've done here on offense, and we want to continue that type of offensive production. It might look a little different at times. It might look similar at times. So we're excited to, get the ball in the end zone at the end of the day and not settle for 3 points. We want to score touchdowns. That's the goal every drive.
Yeah, all about scoring points, all about scoring sevens for sure. I'm excited to see it, man, on Saturday. There's no doubt about it. I'm excited, too, to talk a little personnel when we come back with Coach Danny Freund on Talkin Cougars. This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley. Back here on Talkin Cougars with Offensive Coordinator Danny Freund. We talked a little bit about what Coug fans could expect schematically. What about what we could expect personnel-wise? We're not going to find out till that first snap Saturday who the quarterback's going to be. It started out as kind of a light room to start the offseason with Zevi Eckhouse, Jackson Potter, had a couple transfers come in. Now it's a really full, what seems like talented quarterback room. Can you share a little bit about the guys at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great competition throughout fall camp. Also throughout summer, we added 2 additions after spring ball. One's from Rutgers, a Johnny Shepard, another one from Pittsburgh, Julian Duggar, both young kids. Like Johnny's got 3 years left, Doug's has 4 years left. So to add those guys with Zevi and Jackson has made it a very competitive room. I think they've all done a great job pushing each other, and they've done a great job for us in terms of making it a really tough decision for us. We feel like we can win with all those guys, in different ways, and it's just a matter of the competition and getting, making the right decision for the team to feel like, hey, how do we start the best as a football team here in September and August to get off to a great start, and then who do we feel is best to lead our program. But Zevi's been awesome. His leadership, he kind of went through spring with the ones and has done a great job with his command of the offense and just his leadership. Potts has been consistent, very accurate, been really good with decision making, and all you can see is kind of him continuing to get better. The other 2 guys have come in and kind of fast tracked it here in the summer, trying to learn the offense. But you'll see in terms of their skill set and ability to play outside the pocket and play with their feet and create a little bit more. But yeah, Julian's a kid that's, I think, he played in the bowl game last year against Toledo and did some good things at Pittsburgh, and, has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. So I think Cougar fans should be really excited about him. And then, Johnny's, very smart kid, can go out there and operate, big, powerful, in terms of being able to run the football, but also his arm is extremely strong too and can push the ball down the field. So it's been unique, something that I've never been a part of as far as having more than 2 quarterbacks in a competition. It's, there's legitimately 4 guys that were in this thing to compete, to be the guy, against Idaho on Saturday. So looking forward to, hopefully, a lot of those guys, have been in the mix, but obviously we're going to go with one, and we couldn't be more excited for that guy to take the field Saturday.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I've been in my fair share of quarterback competitions, been a starter, been a backup. You always got to be, as they say, one play away. Got to be ready for that one play, whether you're second or third. So it's good to hear that all 4 of those guys, bring something to the table. Like you said, unique skill sets. Potter's 6'5", right? Zevi's on the smaller side, but good athlete. And then between Duggar and Shepard, you got a couple different skill sets too. I think that's really interesting. As you think about the overall personnel, another kind of big change in kind of the group is that wide receiver tight end group, right? And I'm going to lump them together partially because I think Coug fans are going to find out quickly that the tight end's pretty involved in your offense. So as you think about that wide receiver tight end group, who do you envision stepping up, new faces we might see, or be pretty involved in the pass game?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the guys that were here last year, I think Trey Lechner is a huge piece for us in terms of what we want to do, playing tight end, being able to move around off the ball. You can split him out, has a very good skill set with the ball in hand. Transfer Mola from Michigan State. He'll be a senior. He's done a nice job. Bo Baker is another kid that came with us from South Dakota State. He was a big Y body. Had an injury last year, so he's just kind of coming along. Josh Meredith has been so strong and so consistent for us, and he'll be a leader of our offense and entire team. So I think you'll see him out there. Obviously, Brandon Ganashamorthy is another one that played in the bowl game last year, had a touchdown. He has a lot of potential at receiver. And then there's there's a transfer from Oregon State, Jeremiah Noga, who's done a great job. He'll be a senior. And then there's just a mix of Devin Ellison's a transfer. It's very, very competitive. You talk about the quarterback room being competitive. I would say the receiver room is, even though more of those guys play, to get into the rotation to be 4, 5, 6 and be able to get snaps, I think that'll be a constant week by week thing. And some of it is just see who responds well in the first game and early in the year and see who can consistently make plays. But Landon Wright is a guy that comes to mind. Carter Pabst is a young true freshman that's really been lights out for a true freshman. So we'll see if he can kind of continue that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's you've kind of we've known the Kyle Williams of the world, right, and the Josh Kellys and all these guys that have come before that, and it's fun to see new faces emerge, like you said, and a guy like Josh Meredith, and it probably warms Bump's heart to hear about the deep room with a bunch of playmakers as a receiver, right, in his own right. In my opinion, though, in the end, this team is going to go as much as that running back room goes. And I know you are fired up about that group. A couple guys that came with you from South Dakota State, right? And, one holdover in Leo Palouse, but seems like a running back room that can really move the needle offensively.
Yeah, no doubt. It starts up front. I mean, it starts with the guys up front. We're fortunate to have Hilborn back and Brock Dew back and those guys, and they got to do a great job as far as just leading. Because if you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't really matter what you do offensively. Like those guys are strong. Really excited about the running back room. The talent level is strong. I think there's depth there with Angel. Angel coming with us. There's three of them: Angel Johnson, Kirby Voorhees, and Maxwell Woods. All came with us from South Dakota State. We're very fortunate with those kids, and they're really good, not only in the run game, but in the protection stuff, catching the ball in the backfield. I think you'll see them catch a lot of balls and just really be an outlet for the quarterback this year. And then Leo's had a really strong fall camp. I mean, he's very talented and he's got, 3 years left. So I think you'll see a healthy amount of all four of those guys, whether we're in some 21, 20 personnel, and just trying to get those guys the ball in different ways and utilize their skill sets because, we want to be explosive in the run game. And sometimes it's just about getting those guys started and getting them to momentum, and they're going to make you look good if they can make a guy miss on the perimeter and turn a 7-yard gain into a 20 or explosive run. And just been really excited about the growth even from spring to fall camp. I know the guys put in so much work over the summer with the player-led practices and just kind of developing the chemistry and connection on the team. And when you look at college football these days, I think the more you can build those connections and try to get an edge chemistry-wise, like because a lot of these rosters are so year to year now with the portal. I think just excited to see the guys go out and play. And
yeah, we're excited to see it. And I tell you what, you might have a defensive head coach in Jimmy Rogers, but Coug fans love scoring points. So we're excited to hear about that in-depth breakdown from Coach Danny Freund. Coach, really appreciate you joining us on Talkin' Cougs.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. Can't wait for Saturday, my first game at Geisa Field, man. I'm really fired up.
Yeah, we can't wait to see it. We'll be back next on Talkin' Cougars. Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm former Washington State quarterback Alex Brink. What a treat to have Offensive Coordinator Danny Freund here to talk a little bit about what to expect from that offensive group. And with that, we got to put a bow on it, Bump. Unfortunately, we got to talk about defense now. And this team, you mentioned it earlier in the show, is going to be identified by its defense. A defensive head coach in Jimmy Rogers. Jesse Bobbitt, the defensive coordinator, came over with Coach Rogers. They really want to play tough, hard-nosed football, and that's what they did at South Dakota State. What do you see from this defense? Who is going to be an impact player for this group?
Well, you got to start with some returners. I'll go to the perimeter. You got Colson coming back last year, man. He was an impact player. In 2024, he's a junior. Limited action, but he still had a pick, had a forced fumble as well. He's a guy that they're going to rely upon heavily. And then you got to look at some guys coming over from South Dakota. You got Humphrey coming over, played in all 15 games for the Jackrabbits last year. He also had 40 tackles. I would assume, right, going up against the competition they're going up against this year, you are going to be tested on the outside. You lost a lot of guys, right? Every level, somebody has left. But when you have some corners on the outside who can hold it down for you, that'll buy some time for these defensive linemen to get after the quarterback. So I'm looking at Colson, all right, the return. I'm looking at Humphrey, the young man making the move from South Dakota. Who do you got?
I mean, just in general, Bump, you look at the depth chart right now for Washington State on defense, and it is an incredibly veteran group. You talk about Jamori Colson's a redshirt senior. Almost all the players that came over from South Dakota State on the back end are redshirt seniors as well, whether it's Cale Reeder, Tucker Large, Caleb Francel. You got Parker McKenna, who's coming back from last year for Washington State, who's a redshirt senior. And then you've got guys on the line like Rayam Stevenson, who came over. I just think this defense, although there are some new faces, there's guys that have played a lot of football, which I think there's a lot to like in that regard. You talked about the back end. I think Washington State has really upgraded on the back end. You bring back Jamori Colson. He was hurt part of last year, but he's been a productive player, really talented. He was always well-liked by that Jake Dickert staff. Then you add in Colby Humphreys, who's got a ton of experience with NAU and South Dakota State. We already talked about the safeties, whether it's Tucker Large or Cale Reeder or Matthew Durrance. And then you mentioned Caleb Franceville at the nickel position, kind of that Sam 4-2-5, that fifth guy in the outside linebacker spot. He can really run. He's a big hitter. He's really the key to this defense. So you talked about Franceville earlier. For me, this team has got to make some hay on the front end, right? And you've got a returner in Ray Stevenson, who's a really gifted player at the defensive end spot. 2 sacks last year for Washington State. Cougs have been waiting for Ray to kind of make that big step. I want to see if he can do it. Big frame, 6'4", 260 pounds. We'll see if he can make an impact. And then a transfer from New Mexico State, Buda Paletti, has had rave reviews so far in camp. 6'2", 250 pounds. He had 4.5 sacks last year for New Mexico State. It was important for Jimmy Rogers to go out and get some help on the defensive line, and they got that with Paletti, and I'm excited to see him on the field. If those two guys can step up at the defensive end positions, I think Washington State could have a big year defensively because of the talent they already have on the back end.
Yeah, it's all about taking the football away. And how do you do that? You get pressure starting with that defensive line. I loved how you talk about just the speed and the size on the outside. You know, you might be undersized at the nickel spot, maybe the outside linebacker spot, but that means that you're going to be raiding coverage. You're going to be able to step up in the slot and mess up the timing of these slot receivers and mess with the vision of these quarterbacks. So they have to be a savvy group. You're not going to outmuscle, outsize anybody, but if you are where you're supposed to be, if you're fundamentally sound, you never know. It's going to be a grind for these guys, but as long as you get pressure on the quarterback, on the outside you can be a little smaller. Let's see if they can make some plays.
Well, look, Bump, like we've done it, right? We've lived it for Washington State. You're not going to get the prototype player for each position every time. Who's one of the best players to ever play corner at Washington State University?
JD.
Jason David, right? JD made it plays all over the field, one of the smallest guys on the field, playing the NFL for years, right? You don't have to be the biggest guy. I think about the safety position in recent memory, Shalom Luwani, right? He was a terror all over the field. At the nickel position, remember Parker Henry? He was a stud, Skyview, Vancouver kid. Like, it's for Washington State, it's about, like you said, being in the right position, being tough, making plays, being gritty. It's not about how big you are, but these guys can run, and I think that's important. And the big thing for me, Bump, is as I look at this defense, what Washington State had been in the past under Jake Dickert was a high risk, high reward. Remember how many turnovers they would force, right? And it seemed like it was always at the right time. But occasionally when they didn't turn the ball over enough, they gave up too many big plays, right? High risk, high reward. I don't think that's how Jimmy Rogers and Jesse Bobbitt are going to play this. I think they're going to play it more straight up. Let the veteran leadership on this team get out and make plays and make teams beat them instead of giving up the big play. And I'll be interested to see exactly how that plays out when the lights turn on Saturdays.
Be where you are supposed to be on defense, and you might just get a present called a takeaway. All right, we'll see where the Cougs are going to be this season coming up. We'll have a schedule preview coming up next right here on Talkin' Cougars. Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my quarterback, Alex Brink. Let's break down this schedule. The first game that sticks out to me, not in order, I'm looking at Ole Miss. You and I went down south to the SEC, played Auburn. The culture is different. The weather is different. That's going to be a fun game. You're going to find out a lot about that team during that week. Not until October 11th, but at first glance, that's the first game that sticks out to me.
Yeah, the thing that sticks out to me, and part of it is the Ole Miss conversation, is the travel for Washington State. You mentioned going down to the Grove, got to go to Oxford, you got to go out to Virginia, right, to Charlottesville. You got to go to James Madison, another trip to Virginia. You got to go to Denton, Texas, to play North Texas, to Fort Collins to play Colorado State. I mean, it's a tough travel schedule. I mean, I think that's what stands out to me, Bump. Some tough matchups, as you mentioned, some matchups that maybe don't sound tough, like North Texas or Colorado State, or Toledo at home, but those are teams that have had success in their own right at times, or they're tough travel destinations. And I think all those things combined make this, one, a really unique schedule, but two, a really tough schedule for Washington State.
Now, we're used to having home and aways, right? But what about a home and away in the same season? That's what we're going to get from Oregon State. You play them the 1st of November and the 29th. First time, I want to say in Coug history, this has gone down. If I'm wrong, then it happened like 100 years ago. I don't remember. It's not being recorded, but that's going to be interesting, man. You get to play the same team within a month. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of that situation?
Well, I don't know that it's ever happened. I mean, it's not a thing that happens in college football, right? It may be at some lower divisions, but not in the FBS level from what I know. But again, there's some macro things, some big picture things where there's advantages. One, part of that scheduling piece is to avoid more long distance travel for those two programs, particularly Washington State, right? You travel to Oregon State instead of traveling another place to play a money game somewhere. I think that's a huge advantage for Washington State in general, and probably Oregon State to some degree. Then I think, for the teams, seeing each other, we used to do this in the CFL bump. We would play teams 2 or 3 times a year, and you would get waxed one game, right? And you could play the same team the next week, right? Especially some of the rivalry games. And then you come back and you put it on them. And it's just that idea of kind of seeing the tendencies, seeing the personnel, and then being able to see it again right away. We used to always say it was really hard to beat the team twice in the same season within that same month. That's what Washington State and Oregon State are going to experience, right? Is that feeling of if you get a win the first time, you kind of naturally feel like, oh, I got a feel for it. I know what we're going to see. And then boom, the team comes out, right? And they're able to put something else together that you're not expecting. So whoever wins that first game has to guard against that letdown the second game.
And what about September 20th, the Apple Cup, man? The Apple Cup in the fall. Probably will never get used to that. But you got UW, and UW's coming to your house, man. They got a good recruiting class. You got Jet Fish over there. This game is always unpredictable. It's rare that one team just dominates the other team. And I think that if you could come out of this game with a W, come out of this game being competitive, it could catapult you for the rest of the season. You mentioned having to go to Colorado, got to go to Virginia. Obviously, you're going to Oregon State, but there's nothing like the Apple Cup. It's weird, still weird playing that game in September.
Yeah, and I always said this, when they moved the game to September, I said I liked it for Washington State because you play in better weather where you know that you're going to be able to throw the football. You're going to be healthier because it's earlier in the season typically versus a November game where you're more beat up and you don't have the depth that UW might have. I just think I like this matchup in general because it's in Pullman. Obviously, Coug fans have wanted that game back in Pullman since it was put at the neutral site last year, right, in Seattle at Lumen Field. But again, for the Cougs, you mentioned it. It's an opportunity to go out and make a statement on a big stage. There's a couple games along the way where they're going to be in the bright lights of some big networks and have a chance to get eyeballs on, and this is really that first one. I think, Bump, in the first 4 weeks, we're going to know exactly who this team is. You have obviously the opener this week against Idaho. You have a good San Diego State team coming into Pullman, a Pac-12 opponent in 2026. That tough trip to North Texas, and then the Apple Cup at home. We're going to know a lot about this Jimmy Rogers football team after 4 weeks.
Yeah, we are. They're going to be tested. Idaho, San Diego State, North Texas, UW, Colorado, Ole Miss, Virginia, Toledo, Oregon State, Louisiana Tech, James Madison. You end the season at Oregon State as well. But we got to talk about that first game. Idaho Vandals. We used to call it the stat game back in the day. Things might have changed. Maybe they're the same. We'll break that down next here on Talkin' Cougars.
Back on Talkin' Cougars, Season 3, Episode 1. It is game week, Bump. Idaho Vandals, party on the Palouse, or whatever they call it nowadays. But Washington State plays the Vandals. First time in a couple years. And that Idaho Vandals program, Bump, had really improved under Jason Eck. And they were a championship-level program. Eck is now gone to New Mexico. He took a ton of the roster, including starting quarterback Jack Lane, with him. And this team has turned over a lot. Thomas Ford comes in, has coached for a long time, most recently at Oregon State as an assistant. He's got ties to the area, brings back a ton of coaches with ties to the area. Good recruiting class, tried to backfill in the transfer portal, but this is a brand new team, Bump. The Idaho Vandals, just like Washington State, a lot of turnover. What do you expect out of this game?
I don't know what to expect, honestly, right? Both teams are stepping into a new situation. You mentioned Thomas Ford being his first year. Used to be at Oregon State. You got Rodgers over here, his first year. You're bringing guys, he's bringing guys. This is always the hardest game of the season to kind of predict what's going to happen, unless you're talking about two blue bloods, two powerhouses in college football. With these two teams, this is a culture-setting type of game. This is a game where you figure out if all your work in the spring and the summertime really amounts to anything. This is where you figure out, all right, what do we need to improve on as a unit, defense, offense, and special teams, and coaches have to adjust. This is the hardest game, I think, to try to predict what is going to happen, because Idaho did have a good season last year. They are establishing a culture over there. I know Thomas Ford personally, good dude. I believe in what Jimmy Rodgers is doing. So what do I expect? I expect some jabs to be thrown early, and then I expect the coaching and the discipline to show itself late. And that's what it comes down to. Who takes care of the football, what coaches can adjust quickly, and what personnel is going to show out when it's time to make the big play.
You know, a little peek behind the curtain, Bump, and as you know, being a former player at a high level, coaching, all the things, but what Washington State's having to deal with right now, right, the offensive staff for Washington State, they're having to go back and watch Louisville defensive film from 3 years ago when Court Dennison, the defensive coordinator from Idaho, was the defensive coordinator there, because his most recent stop, he wasn't a defensive coordinator. So you got to go back and you got to figure out, what are they going to run? How are they going to do it? Right? Washington State's probably watching Joshua Wood, the starting quarterback for the Vandals, his tape from last year at Fresno State where he got a lot of time. You got to go back and you got to try to put the pieces together and find some tendencies. It's a really hard thing to do. That's a hard thing about week one, when you have a lot of question marks and a lot of new faces and new schemes. And like you said, jabs thrown early, maybe some trick plays. It's really about who can weather the storm early, stay disciplined, and most importantly, and this is going to be the most cliche coach thing ever, you have to protect the football, right? Washington State should have better personnel, should be in a better position, but if they turn the ball over, the Idaho Vandals will take advantage like any team can do. Washington State's got all the advantages. They're playing at home. It's week one. It's a new era. They've got all the excitement. They just need to make sure they weather that early storm.
Man, you just took me back. I remember playing in the NFL for the Seahawks. We're playing the Green Bay Packers, yet we are watching the Buffalo Bills film just for scheme alone. And that's so hard to do sometimes, because you're looking at the safeties, you're looking at the corners, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, that's the scheme they're going to play, but that's not the personnel. That's not the guy that I'm going to see. So that's going to be challenging, man. But as long as you know what you're looking at, as a receiver, you read the triangle, the outside back, or the nickel, the safety, the corner, you split the field in half, just make it simple for yourself, you should be okay. But it's the personnel things. We used to break things down, be like, by my third step, he's turning this way, his hips are open. By his second step, he's going to hitch this way. So trying to marry what you know from the guy from previous film to the defense that you mentioned that you're going to see at Louisville from years ago is going to be the toughest part. But at the end of the day, it's just football, man. Go out there and execute.
Yeah, it's a little bit more about you, as in Washington State this week, than it is about the black and gold and the Idaho Vandals, in my opinion. You got to go out and focus on you. If you're this Washington State football team, focus on your assignment, your job, like you said, your reads and keys, and then go out and execute. And I think things will take care of themselves. Well, that's a wrap, Bump. We did it. Week one is in the books. I'm excited to see a little football happening on the Palouse. It's going to be a fun one. I'm Alex Brink. You can find me on Twitter at AlexBrink10. We can talk a little ball. I will also be on the radio broadcast for my 9th year for Washington State with the voice of the Cougs, Chris King, our great sideline analyst, Jessamine McIntyre. Hope you guys listen in.
All right, I'm Michael Bumpus. Find me on X, Michael Bumpus 5, IG Michael Bumpus 5. This week, I'm on ESPN Plus calling the ASU game with my guy Roxy. On the weekends, I'm doing CW stuff. And on Sundays, find me on the Seahawks broadcast during the week, the Bumpus Station Show, 10 to 2 on Seattle Sports. Man, it's been fun talking Cougars. Season 3, Episode 1.